Audiobook Academy Biography presents Rupert Murdoch. News Corporation, the global media company founded and headed by media tycoon Rupert Murdoch. In 1986, he founded the Fox Broadcasting Company. Former war correspondent and newspaper publisher Rupert Murdoch was raised by his renowned father. His father's newspapers, the Sunday Mail and News, were passed down to him, and he has since acquired a number of additional media enterprises. He began purchasing American newspapers in the 1970s. In 1985, Murdoch purchased 20th Century Fox Film Corporation, which he later used to launch Fox News, a cable television network that revolutionized the industry. Rupert Murdoch sold a large portion of 21st Century Fox to Disney in 2017, just 4 years after splitting his media company into two separate entities, 21st Century Fox Incorporated and News Corporation. Childhood and professional life. An Australian farmer's son, Keith Rupert Murdoch was born on March 11, 1931 in a rural town 30 miles south of Melbourne. Rupert, the name of Murdoch's maternal grandfather, has been his middle name since he was born. In addition to the Herald and Courier Mail in Brisbane, Keith Murdoch also controlled the News and Sunday Mail in Melbourne. His father was a prominent Australian journalist and owned a number of local and regional newspapers. It was named Cruden Farm after Murdoch's birthplace in Scotland, where his father was born and his mother immigrated. An old stone building with colonial-style columns, decorated with original paintings, a grand piano and library of books, and surrounded by lush countryside and ghost gum trees, Cruden Farm was the perfect setting for a family vacation. Horseback riding was Murdoch's favorite childhood sport. Over time, his mother reminisced about her son's early years. "I believe I had a fairly typical upbringing. Nothing extravagant or indulgent. I believe he had the good fortune of being raised in a beautiful environment." When Murdoch was a child, his father was a well-known journalist, and he was destined to follow in his footsteps. He recalls thinking to himself, "I suppose it was exciting for me to grow up in a publishing family, the family of a newspaper man. After the age of 10 or 12, I never seriously considered another life." He attended Geelong Grammar, an exclusive Australian boarding school, before moving to England to attend Worcester College at Oxford University. One of Murdoch's earliest biographers described him as a typical, red-blooded college student who had numerous friends, chased females, went on the customary drinking binges, indulged in slapdash horseplay, tried sports and never had enough money, no doubt due to his gambling. It all came to an abrupt halt in 1952 when Murdoch's father unexpectedly passed away, leaving his son in charge of the News and the Sunday Mail in Adelaide. He returned to Australia in 1953 at the age of 22 after serving as an apprentice to Lord Beaverbrook at the Daily Express in London and returning to take charge of his father's papers. The Newspaper Tycoon. As soon as he took over the Sunday Mail and News, Rupert Murdoch threw himself into every part of the daily operations of the papers. There, he was responsible for writing headlines and redesigning the layout of the pages. Although these modifications were contentious, the news circulation increased as a result of his rapid transformation of the publication into a journal of crime, lust, and scandal. He bought the Perth-based Sunday Times 3 years later in 1956 and redesigned it in the new sensationalist manner. When Murdoch bought the failing Mirror in 1960, he began quietly rebuilding it into Sydney's best-selling afternoon paper. This was his first foray into the lucrative Sydney market. When Murdoch's first national daily newspaper, The Australian, launched in 1965, he was encouraged by his success and harbored ambitions of political influence. This helped to restore Murdoch's reputation as a credible news publisher. Murdoch purchased the Sunday tabloid The News of the World in London in the fall of 1968, when he was 37 years old, and owned an Australian news empire worth of $50 million. With his formula of covering primarily on sex, sports and crime, he purchased another struggling daily tabloid, The Sun, and supervised a successful transition. The Sun's page 3 story also drew in readers by showcasing topless women. San Antonio News, a Texas-based tabloid, was purchased by Murdoch in 1973 to build his media empire in the United States. Having established successful media empires in Australia and England, Rupert Murdoch moved quickly to the United States, starting a national tabloid, The Star, in 1974 and buying the New York Post in 1976. As a holding company for his many media properties, Murdoch formed News Corporation in 1979. During the 1980s and 1990s, Rupert Murdoch amassed a staggering number of media companies all over the world. He purchased the Chicago Sun-Times, the Village Voice, and New York Magazine in the United States. He bought the Venerable Times and Sunday Times of London while he was in England. Emergence of Fox. The expansion of Murdoch's media empire into television and entertainment also took place during these years. It was in 1985 that he bought the 20th Century Fox Film Corporation and a number of independent television stations and turned them all into one company called Fox Incorporated. A Hong Kong-based television broadcasting firm, Star TV, was created by him back in 1990. In addition, he merged HarperCollins in 1990 after purchasing a number of famous American and British academic and literary publishing houses in the late 1980s. Fox Sports 1 and the Fox Sports website are both owned by Rupert Murdoch. He is a part owner of the Los Angeles Kings NHL franchise and the Los Angeles Lakers NBA franchise. Business of media. To keep a tight grip on the media that the public consumes on a daily basis, Murdoch continued to grow News Corporation's assets as the new century began. In 2005, he bought Intermix Media, the company that owns MySpace.com, a prominent social networking site. Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal's parent company, was purchased by the long-standing newspaper entrepreneur in 2007. Murdoch has come under fire for his conservative political beliefs, which are frequently reflected in the reporting of Murdoch-controlled networks like Fox News, as well as his monopoly on foreign media outlets. Each of the Republican Governors Association and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce received a $1 million donation from News Corporation in the 2010 American midterm elections. Some others contended that the owner of a major news organization covering the election should not actively contribute to the political campaigns involved. Murdoch's empire, on the other hand, suffered a major setback in 2011. In a phone hacking incident, his London newspaper, The News of the World, was implicated. It was discovered that a number of editors and journalists had unlawfully listened to the voicemails of prominent British figures. In the same year, Rupert was summoned to testify, and The News of the World was shut down. Damages were later paid to some of those who had been hacked by News Corporation. To this day, News Corporation has a substantial global media presence despite the scandal. Murdoch is the owner of a large number of the books, newspapers, television series, films, radio stations, websites, blogs, and social media networks that people use and enjoy. He announced a major reorganization of his enterprise in 2013. 21st Century Fox Incorporated and News Corporation were formed as a result of Murdoch's decision to split his company in two. His entertainment business was now distinct from his publishing business as a result of this shift. Both firms will be uniquely positioned to execute on their respective strategic objectives and lead their industries forward, Murdoch reportedly told the Los Angeles Times. As a young publisher, Murdoch craved the kind of influence he would one day have, even if he couldn't have foreseen how much authority he would one day possess. I felt the exhilaration and the strength, he explains. Not just physical strength, but the ability to shape the course of events. As for Murdoch, he has stated that he could not envision his life any other way after 6 decades in the media industry. When you work in the media, particularly newspapers, you're in the middle of everything that's going on in a town, and I can't think of a better way to spend your time. Sale to Disney and a new executive team. It was revealed in June 2015 that Rupert Murdoch was planning to hand over 21st Century Fox's reins to his son James. Lachlan Murdoch, Murdoch's oldest son, will serve as executive co-chairman of the company. Fox News and the Fox television station's group chairman and CEO Roger Ailes resigned in July 2016 after being sued by Fox television star Gretchen Carlson for sexual harassment. Murdoch stated that he would temporarily assume Ailes' position. While 21st Century Fox was reorganizing, it was in talks with Walt Disney about selling its properties. According to some reports, Fox is reviewing offers for its movie and television networks, as well as its international businesses, just a few weeks after conversations were thought to have finished in November 2017. Midway through the month of December, Disney and 21st Century Fox came to an agreement under which Disney would buy the majority of 21st Century Fox's stock for around $52.4 billion. Murdoch announced he would spin off Fox News, Fox Broadcasting, and FS1 into a separate publicly traded firm, but he retained control of all three. A Wired cover story in February 2018 exposed details of a long-running rivalry between Rupert Murdoch and Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook. Murdoch's News Corporation has been accused of trying to start a scandal about the presence of sexual predators on Facebook as far back as 2007. When Murdoch confronted Zuckerberg about Facebook's news feed algorithm change in 2016, he accused the social network of giving it the potential to significantly alter rival websites' traffic, a claim that Zuckerberg denies. Retaliation from News Corporation has been warned by lobbying and launching an anti-Facebook campaign through its various media outlets. Murdoch tried to raise 21st Century Fox's share in Sky News as he waited for Disney's approval of his enormous deal. Even though 21st Century Fox insisted that Sky News would retain editorial independence, politicians and regulators obstructed the deal because of their fears about a monopoly in the British news industry held by the firm. Private life. In 1956, Murdoch married Patricia Booker, with whom he had a daughter. Before divorcing in 1965, they had a daughter named Prudence. On November 15, 1966, the actor was married to actress-producer Anna Torv. They had 3 children until splitting in 1999. Wendy Deng became Murdoch's third wife just 17 days after their second divorce was finalized, and they welcomed their first child together. They have 2 young children. Murdoch filed for divorce from Deng in June 2013, stating in court filings that the relationship between husband and wife had broken down irretrievably. Rumors of difficulty in the marriage had been circulating for some time, so the news of their breakup came as a surprise to many. Finally, the divorce was finalized in 2014. Jerry Hall, Mick Jagger's ex-girlfriend, became engaged to Murdoch in January 2016. The couple is said to have started dating in the summer of 2013. On March 4, 2016, they married in London. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.